Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Shalidah Binti Zulkarnain. My metric number is 270627. So today I would like to present about propaganda, and in this topic I will discuss more about what is propaganda, why state chooses propaganda, how state applies or adopts propaganda, what are the results or impacts of propaganda, and lastly, conclusion. What is propaganda? Propaganda comes from modern Latin word, a singular feminine of the gerundive form of propagare, which means to spread or to propagate. Propaganda is actually a communication that is primarily used to influence an audience and further an agenda, which may not be objective and may be selectively presenting facts in order to encourage a particular synthesis or perception. Back to the history, primitive forms of propaganda have been a human activity as far back as reliable recorded evidence exists. An early example of propaganda is during the Behistun encryption. And another example of propaganda during ancient history is the last Roman Civil War. Other than that, the first large-scale and organized propagation of government propaganda was occasioned by the outbreak of war in 1914. After the defeat of Germany in the First World War, military officials such as Erich Ludendorff suggested that British propaganda had been instrumental in their defeat. In the early 20th century, the invention of motion pictures, as in movies, gave propaganda creators a powerful tool for advancing political and military interests when it came to reading a broad segment of the population and creating concern or encouraging rejection of the real or imagined enemy. Propaganda is often associated with material which is prepared by governments, activist groups, companies, religious organizations, the media, and also individual produce propaganda. Next, why state chooses propaganda. Propaganda has become more common in political contexts, in particular to refer to certain efforts sponsored by governments and political groups, but also often covert interests. In the early 20th century, propaganda was exemplified in the form of party slogans. Propaganda also has much in common with public information campaigns by government, which are intended to encourage or discourage certain forms of behavior. The emphasis is more political in propaganda. The internet has become a prolific method of distributing political propaganda, benefiting from an evolution in coding called bots. Software agents or bots can be used for many things, including populating social media with automated messages and posts with a range of sophistication. For example, during the 2016 US election, a cyber strategy was implemented using bots to direct US voters to Russian political news and information sources, and to spread politically motivated rumors and false news stories. At this point, it is considered commonplace contemporary political strategy around the world to implement bots in achieving political goals. Next, how state applies or adopts propaganda. Propaganda, in the broadest sense, is the technique of influencing human action by the manipulation of representation. This representation may take spoken, written, pictorial, or musical form. Basically, propaganda is understood as a form of manipulation of public opinion. Common media for transmitting propaganda messages includes news report, government report, books, movies, social media, radio, television, or poster. In the case of radio and television, propaganda can exist on news, current affairs, or talk show segments. Generally, these messages will contain direction on how to obtain more information via a website, hotline, radio program, and else. The strategy intends to initiate the individual from information recipient to information seeker through reinforcement, and then from information seeker to opinion leader through indoctrination. Moving on to what are the results or impacts of propaganda. Propaganda seeks not only to persuade users to interpret events through a particular lens but also to manipulate relationships, dividing friends, breaking alliances, and leaving individual isolated and tractable online and offline. Propaganda helps to socialize conflicts and make them part of everyday life. This increasing scope of engagement can also lead to an internalization of conflict, which means that instead of encouraging you to filter alternative sources of information, propaganda aims to reshape your cognitive filter as well as the relationship between you and your environment. Lastly, the conclusion. Propaganda is actually a tool in changing your opinion. There are a lot of techniques in delivering propaganda. It's either the content are delivered in a good way or a bad way. In a nutshell, propaganda is actually a communication in order to influence people to do good things or bad things. It is all up to us in choosing the right path. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To my respective lecturer, Dr. Norafida Ismail. My name is Karun Azribineri with metric card number 269927. Today I would like to present and share about the economy. So let's get started. First of all, research on economic foreign policy has generally taken one of two analytic approaches, which is realism or more recently behavioralism. A third approach using cognitive analysis is possible. By extrapolating from political culture, we can recognize economic culture as the social perceptions that structure economic policy. The level of economic development of a country also influences the foreign policy of that country. Many advanced industrialist countries play a dominant role in world politics and formulate their foreign policies to maintain such superiority in the system. From our research, there are three of the question that we can conclude in the economic part. The first is the what are the forms of states foreign policy? What are the forms of states foreign economic policy? The form of economic policy of a country must aim to maintain order in international trade. So there's a three example of the form of states foreign economic policy. The first is international trade policy, international payment policy, and lastly is the foreign aid policy. And the second of the research question is the what are the outcome of foreign economic policy? The outcome is to build regional trade in relations. For example, we know Malaysia involved in trading policy between ASEAN countries. So in the ASEAN countries, there are agreement that called AFTA, which is AFTA is the ASEAN Free Trade Area. The AFTA is the agreement regarding the free trading area. So AFTA is found to establish trading between ASEAN and to increase international trade for the state in the ASEAN country. So the last research question is the why state adopts foreign economic policy. There are two reasons why the state adopts foreign economic policy. So the first is to entail delicate trade-off between diverse interests. Why? Because to generate the economy of the state by exchanging expertise in the country. We know that many of the country have their own expertise, such as in Malaysia, our economy are based of the palm oil plantation. So we can trade our economic expertise, which is the palm oil, with the other expertise of other country. So the second of why state adopts foreign economic policy is to secure the regional economy. So the foreign economic policy maker want to build strong engagement, want to build strong engagement between the country in the region. In conclusion, research in foreign policy are interacted with the economy. Foreign decision makers assuming that study in foreign policy could help them to make the best decision of uh, the economy regarding the economy of a country, because they have to make the decision that meet the highest interest of all the stakeholders in the states and the country. So that's all my presentation today. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My part, I will explain about the case study of propaganda. The United States of America is a villain for North Korea propaganda. Why North Korea said that America is villain? North Korea hatred for the first time to America was because America participated in the North Korean war by helping South Korea. For North Korea, the destruction comes from the air because of America. This conflict is seen as the first largest scale air campaigns undertaken by the US Air Force. American planes dropped about 635,000 tons of explosive on North Korea, greater than the three-year bombs across the Pacific in the World War II, including 32,000 tons of napalm. No one knows the specific how many people die in the war, but it's predicted that the North Korea, which at the time had a population of 9 million people, had to lose 1 million civilian and soldier at the war. Meanwhile, South Korea lost more than 3 million civilian and 225,000 soldiers from the total population of 20 million in 1950. From this incident, North Korea started to hate America and started said that America is a war criminal. And the second one is North Korea spread its propaganda that America is the real criminal. It took a long struggle for the North Korean people to recover from American air raids on the North Korean territory. The condition of the North Korean people at that time was petrified and worried that any time the bombs would fall into their territory again. They were physically disturbed, so it took a long time enough for their recovery. The North Korean government used U.S. deadly airstrike to portray the U.S. to their citizens in any propaganda that America is enemy who could do that terrible thing again to their country. The North Korean government used this opportunity to educate their people about how dangerous America is to the North Korean state. The North Korean people believe that the United States of America is a war criminal for North Korea, and at the time, Korean people witnessed the first time how America dropped lots of bombs through the sky to their country. Many of their sister and brother died as a result of the attack until they still feel the cruelty of America that ravaged their country. And this is what encouraged North Korean people to rise up and fight America in the present era, in the current era, so that past events do not repeat it again in the future. And the three is what kind of media does North Korea use to spread their propaganda? In every speech by Kim Jong Un, he always said that America was North Korea's biggest enemy, and the North Korea people believe what their leader said. North Korea government spread their propaganda through newspaper, television, radio, poster, and media broadcasts. The Korean government entirely hold all media information in the North Korea. And then I will explain about the case study of economy, how Britain is using economy strategies in the past Brexit. The first one is the British Central Bank decided to halt interest rate in response to post-Brexit. Britain's strategy to face challenge after leaving the European Union is to decide to keep interest rate in the response to post-Brexit economic challenge. This is to shore up the UK economy recovery, which is facing multiple challenges from the coronavirus and Brexit. This is done to reduce the deep recession that Britain has experienced due to the impact of the coronavirus. The British Central Bank applies an interest rate of 0.1% so that people who cannot work fully during this coronavirus and must meet their daily needs or daily life needs can borrow money from the banks. And the second one is no longer use euro and switch to pounds. Britons no longer use the euro currency after Britain officially exited the European Union. One of Britain's strategy after leaving the European Union is not to use the euro and switch to using the pound sterling currency. The reason for the UK to change currency is because of the crisis that started from the bad credit a situation in which customer, individual or companies are unable to pay the creditors on a time at Greece, which then had a far-reaching impact for the other European countries. This is from the Greek that had started this bad credit. Countries that support the European economy, such as Germany, French, and Italy, were also hit the impact of the crisis. Euros then pressured and result in declined economic growth figures of countries in the eurozone. The main object of the European Union is to promote economic progress and social, especially with the creation of the free market, economic equity, and the social. And then I will explain about the Britain made a significant agreement with Japan for the first time after Brexit and UK to cut corporate tax less than 15%. After Britain decided to quit the European Union membership, Britain entered into direct cooperation with Japan after leaving this European Union, and this is the first free trade agreement since Britain once again become an independent trading country under the WTO, a World Trade Organization. The agreement removes UK tariff on Japan's car gradually to zero by 2026. Similar to the Japan and European Union trade agreement. UK Finance Minister George Osborne plans to cut corporate tax to less than 15% to keep companies willing to invest in the country after the decision of British citizens to leave the European Union. Telecommunication company Vodafone previously planned to move its headquarters after the Brexit decision. Okay, that's all from me. I think. Thank you.